Welcome to Stewarding the Next. This is episode one, and I'm your host, Charmian-Marie Beadle. Now, Stewarding the Next, just to give you a synopsis, is literally about providing you with the tools, the conversations, and ideally the motivation to better steward what the Lord has placed in your hand for the next season, whether that season is going to start tomorrow or 5 years down the line. You want to make sure that you are truly nurturing what the Lord has placed in your hand, but in a way that grows it and allows you to reach a place of mastery and all the things, right? So, based on that, we're going to be focusing on, the core areas of stewardship that I believe, help us to live a more rounded life and to steward things in a more rounded way, right? So, those areas, it's six areas. The first one is your relationship with God, right? That's important. Secondly, is your temple, your body, right? Remember, the Bible tells us that our body is a temple, so we need to treat it well, right? Third thing is your message. What's your testimony? What has the Lord placed on your heart to share, right? Fourth thing, gifts and talents. It's important to recognize what the Lord has equipped you with in terms of, your gifts and talents and stuff, right? The fifth thing is business. You can say career path as well, but I'm a strong advocate for entrepreneurship. So I'll predominantly be having conversations about entrepreneurship. And then the sixth thing is your rhythm. What are the personal habits that help to fuel you as you steward the different things? What decisions do you make? Is there self leadership involved, or is there kind of it being lacking? It's all about making sure that you are able to, and I'm not going to use the word balance because that's a whole other conversation, but it's making sure that you're able to do what you need to do from in a place that doesn't eventually or immediately lead you into burnout, right? So yeah, so those six areas are the things that I believe help us to better steward things that the Lord has placed in our hands and moves us forward in a rhythmic kind of way that will allow us to truly master the things while we are in waiting, and master things so that we indeed please God in the wait, right? And then once He sets us on the path towards our cool achieving whatever in that season that he has assigned to us and stuff, that will further bring him glory because we would have prepared, because we would have mastered in that season of waiting that we just exited from. So yeah, so I'm really excited about breaking these down with you. Sharing some tips, sharing some personal lessons that I learned and things like that. And yeah, now this episode particularly, of course, is the intro episode, but it's also about um, making sure that we know that stewardship goes beyond money, right? And making sure that we know that God is required in the midst of every area of our lives, right? So let's talk about stewardship going beyond money. A few weeks ago, I would have released a clip on social media about this very thing, right? And the reason for that is because I wanted to share my own journey with stewardship. Like, I'm 30 plus, right? And I grew up just thinking that stewardship had to do with your tithes and your offerings, right? Just making sure that you throw them on a Sunday. And for a very long time, like, I wasn't tithing, I wasn't throwing offering, So I just thought, indeed, I'm bad at stewardship, And then even though we had the parable of the talents, are like, all right, cool, steward your talents, make sure you're using up your voice and whatever. So using up your voice, in my view, was the stewardship, right? So those were my two views on stewardship, pretty much. And then the Lord brought me into a season where He wanted to expand my view and my vision of what stewardship was, and help me to actually be more intentional on my own stewardship journey, because I was doing it in certain areas already and I didn't recognize it, and because I didn't recognize it, I wasn't being intentional about it, right? So for instance, in 2011, he gave me Page. That's my first business, my magazine, my, like, yeah, right. And in him giving me Paige to steward over, I pushed forward with it and stuff because I really believed in the vision. And then in 2015 or 2016, one of them, I went on a hiatus. Yes, 2016, went on a hiatus officially. Um, but I didn't know it was a hiatus at that time. And then at the end of 2021, it was back, right? Now, interestingly, I've been pushing forward with it on and off, and of course, it just seems kind of annoying to many persons that I haven't been consistent with it. And most of the time, why it hasn't been consistent is because I've either fallen into depression. That's what happened between 2022 and 2024. And then, well, yeah, prior to that, it was on a hiatus, right? But in the midst of that too, there were certain visions that the Lord gave me for the magazine that I felt like I wasn't achieving. And so for me, I needed to withdraw to be able to do that. Now, again, I'm not thinking this is stewardship. This is just me trying to achieve the vision that the Lord gave me, right? So he sat me down, to let me know that, yeah, that's actually a part of stewardship, knowing when to pull back, knowing when to stop or pause and regroup and making sure that it is truly achieving. So like the pause is a part of the journey. The pullback is a part of the journey, but the push forward is as well, right? So it's always about doing your best to reach a place of mastery or achieve. And sometimes it's just messy, right? But that doesn't mean you're not deliberately stewarding the thing. You're actually just trying to get to a place where it makes sense, right? So he told me that about Paige, and then he also opened my eyes to a lot of other things that I was stewarding, you know. So even in terms of my body, like in 2022, funny enough, I started clean eating, like deliberately cutting certain things out of my diet and stuff because of some reaction that I my body was having, and I my body has really been reacting a lot better, so I started speaking more publicly about it, making sure that persons knew about it being a fusion between Caribbean and Mediterranean cuisines. And yeah, like I even started my brand Island Essence, where I started wanting to share some of the food so people could see like the different way of eating and taste it, and so like eating healthily and eating clean doesn't have to be boring. So it's really near and dear to my heart. And then beyond the temple aspect of things, business, he has graced me to be an entrepreneur, but he had to sit me down and remind me of that because of the depression that I did go through between 2022 and 2024. Because the major trigger, or the final trigger, I would say, was the crashing of all the businesses that I had built in that time. You get what I'm saying? And yes, I did operate business between 2022 and 2024, but I did it anonymously for the most part, or they were like deliberately just project businesses because I actually had to work on money to then pay off some debts. You get what I'm saying? So yeah, I count the period, but I don't. But he had to bring me to a place where I counted that, because sometimes it's just messy, right? Then in terms of stewarding gifts and talents, again, I mean, I've always been singing, but how are we working on improvement? So he reminded me that I am trained classically. I have distinctions in grade one and grade two of Royal School exams, from the UK. Like, so I mean, I can go on. He showed me so many different areas, right? Even my hair, right? Like in January 2026, I decided that I wanted to focus on length retention and growth in my hair, and so I made the decision to no longer be putting in false hair in my hair, right? False hair meaning braids. I don't do the wig thing or whatever, or I didn't do the wig thing or whatever. And yeah, and since then, my hair has pretty much been flourishing. I have a routine every 3 weeks. It's either, in mini twists or mini braids. And then I pull it out and then I put it back in again. So right now I'm in between, and so he really allowed me to recognize that I've been on a stewardship journey in multiple areas of my life. And that, funny enough, is the key thing that I am able to speak about literally while I sleep, you know? And that blew my mind, because I can coach on it, I can speak on it, I can devise or create systems that will help others to steward because of what I have gone through in a smooth way and in a messy way. You get what I'm saying? And it's just been beautiful, so he completely opened my eyes to the fact that stewardship is way beyond money, and I am absolutely grateful for that, and I pray that through even listening to this, you'll recognize that stewardship is beyond money. It is beyond the parable of the talents, but the principle of the parable of the talents literally is the basis of stewardship. Making sure that you acknowledge what the Lord has placed in your hands. Like, don't bury it, or put it aside out of and say that you wait until He comes back. Hello. He put it in your hands so that you can nurture it and grow it and multiply, right? And that multiplication is the making an impact, and it is a part of your personal purpose, of going into the world and making sure that people know the good news and making disciples and all of those things. It's a part of it. So if He's given you the gift to speak, if He's given you the gift to something, put documents together, make sure somewhere is clean. Like, I'm being so serious. Somebody can come into a room and say, hey, this place is extra clean, this person has a gift, and then maybe you speak to them about that. Like, maybe they ask a question or whatever, and they're like, is the Lord inspire me to da 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 da? You never know if that sparks a conversation, or if that sparks somebody else wanting to explore, how to. You get what I'm saying? Like, you never know. So don't underestimate the specific gifts and talents that the Lord has given you. Don't underestimate the specific business ideas, the specific way of eating that the Lord has led you to, the specific way of managing your hair or managing your skin, or you get what I'm saying? Like, all of it plays a part in you being a purpose filled individual who has been sent on a mission to make an impact in this world for God's glory, So I pray that with this first episode, you are reminded that, indeed, stewardship is about money. And, the parable of the talents provides us with principles um, to help us to remember that we are called to multiply, right? And I pray that as we move forward together through this podcast, you'll recognize that, yeah, the journey is not going to be perfect. And you stopping for a season, and maybe you want to call it failure, sure, whatever. And I say sure, whatever, because as much as I embrace the fact that we're having more conversations about business failure or failure in life and stuff like that, so that we normalize that being part of the process. I also want us to normalize knowing that, as much as it's part of the process, it doesn't have to be classed as failure, because the idea is that you learn from it. The idea is that you learn the different things that you need to learn so that you ideally don't do it again, right? It's only a failure if you don't learn from it. And that's important to learn as you go on your stewardship journey, so that you can have a healthy mindset towards failure in a season, or having to withdraw in a season, having to pause in a season. It doesn't mean that you stop. And when I say stop, I don't mean like, all right, cool, pause. Sometimes we just give up and throw away the key, to say, all right, cool, this is never gonna work. But what was really required was a pause. And if we don't recognize that, we die with some of the very important thing that the Lord actually gave us to do in the earth in our very specific way. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to do that. So yeah, thank you for watching episode 1. I pray that your mind is a bit more open in terms of what stewardship actually looks like, or actually is. And I pray that as we journey together, you take more responsibility for what the Lord has placed in your hands so that it can multiply and so that you will be empowered to make an impact in the world for God's glory. Take care.